Your average actually.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the October Transit Riders Council meeting. We've got a lot of really interesting topics to talk about today and two really interesting presentations, I believe. It is also Subway Day for those that are not aware of it. And in 1904, on this very day, the first subway line began operation and made the city what it is today. It was a great start. It ran from City Hall up to Grand Central, over to Times Square and up to 145th Street. That was the original line.
And its name was? It was started by August Belmont and it was called the Interborough Rapid Transit System,
Yeah.
which is how we get IRT.
Which is how we got IRT.
There we go. I love all of this history stuff. Excuse me, but when it comes up, it's fun.
And in honor of Subway Day, we've got some sweets here for folks. We've got some cupcakes to celebrate Subway Day, and hopefully you're all riding. I've been riding quite a bit.
And what else are we celebrating?
Oh, we're celebrating Kara, who was given a scholarship award last night at the Women's Transportation Seminar. Fabulous.
I have to say, as I was telling Kara before the meeting started, as one of the founding mothers of WTS. It really started as not so much to bring women together, but as a defense mechanism, because at the time we got started in 1980 or 81, there were about in New York, Washington, and two other systems, there were about 8 women who were in middle management positions, and that was it. So we've grown a lot, and it's wonderful that WTS is now giving scholarships and doing so many other things. And little did we know that we'd have people like Kara when we started.
Oh, it's great.
My God, 1940. Oh, she's 42 years ago. I was 6 at the time. When it started.
And for just so everyone knows, the vanilla and chocolate are gluten-free and vegan.
Oh, wow. Great.
And at the moment, we have enough for everybody in the room.
Oh,
Just saying. So whoever's first, but then
you can't
You
aim,
can't feed it.
can't aim this mouse at it and make it virtual for those that are on.
sorry, we'll send you guys cupcakes
All right.
thoughts.
Well, let's move on, folks.
Okay.
We've got a lot to talk about. So, as we have a quorum, may we get an approval of today's agenda? Make a move.
Second.
Wonderful. Not hearing any objections. How about the minutes? Approval of minutes
Make a motion to approve the minutes as read.
as submitted. Yes.
Second.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ridership continues to rebound many days, which is great news considering all the bad news that you see out on the newspapers and television screens. We hit 3.4 million a day. And last Saturday, because Saturday is one of the busiest days, I've said it and I've seen it, the trains are standing room only. We hit 3.87. Wait a minute, that's not right. We hit
Rich said 2.5 on Saturday.
No, it was 3. It was 3 point something.
yeah, it
Now,
was
so we're now
3 million on Saturday.
3 point something.
Yeah, so that's really great. Yes, Sharon.
Does that at all figure in how many people are illegally there? Is that the count of people on the cars or the count of people paying?
I believe it's paying. So there's probably lots more people on the trains, as we know. But it's a sign
I
that
believe that is the turnstile,
Yeah.
what we used to call the turnstile in the
Yeah,
days.
fares
In
paid.
Borough Rapid Transit
Fares paid.
Company. Oh.
absolutely. Obviously, Saturday is a day of discretionary travel. It's not normally a work day, so people are choosing the subway and bus. That was just the subway, not including the bus. So we were likely over 5 million last Saturday on subway and bus combined. For some reason, Metro North seems to have gone down a little bit on Saturdays. Long Island Railroad remains strong. I don't know why.
The busing.
Well, that's just the Harlem line, upper Harlem line that you're talking
That's a
about.
lot of people on weekends.
Yeah, and it should be an easier transfer between Southeast and the bus to Wasac. It really should when they're doing this work.
Well, mainly I'm concerned about the return. When for an hour, people are out in the cold.
Yes, yes, yes. It's going to be an issue as we get into the colder weather. Do we know how long this?
It's supposed to be November 20, but
Okay. Anyway, that's good news. There's lots of not such good news, as you've all heard, I am sure. There have been far too many attacks on riders. It mirrors what's going on in the streets too. It's really rare to turn on the news any day and not hear a stabbing, a shooting of an innocent bystander somewhere. It's out of hand. We've got to get a handle on these guns, and hopefully we will. You've heard, of course, the mayor and the governor talk about the 3C program, cops, cameras, and care. There is mention frequently of getting folks with mental illnesses to the care that they need. It's quite obvious, and I'm sure Trudy would like to say a few words on this topic, but not everybody who has a mental illness issue is a violent person. In fact, it's probably far fewer than half of that.
Very, very quickly, most of you know who don't know that my late sister had schizophrenia. And every time I say that, people gasp, but it's an illness. It just happens to be a mental illness rather than a physical illness. And one of the things, and Andrew, and I've spoken, but I will talk to Jano and to Mitten, is to make it clear when they talk about the care program, which I think is great, by the way, in getting people health care, mental illness care, psychiatric care, whatever you want to call it. But the fact to make it clear, rather than saying, but not everyone who rides the subway is mentally ill, to say it in a positive way, that most people with mental illness and who ride the subway don't. Because one of the things that we did, and the PCAC with a lot of my nudging, when we started the half-fare cards for people with physical ailments and the elderly, it took about 10 years after that, but to also include people with mental illness. And they added the words to the ruling, severe mental illness, because they didn't want every person who was going to see their shrink to get half-fare who could afford it. But at any rate, but I think it is important that all of you will do it. And if Andrew at the next board meeting, you can maybe say it, that to make it clear that most people, because we have half-fare for people, et cetera, that we shouldn't say that most of the people with who are mentally ill and ride the subways are in that category. But
Oh yeah, Jano, I think Jano made that.
well,
clear.
if Andrew, on my behalf, if you could do that at the next board meeting, I would. So, or at the whatever it's called, the
Transit committee.
transit committee.
Yeah.
Because this is a stigma that exists for everybody, like my sister, who has some, she's not with us, but who has a mental illness of some kind. Okay,
We'll make
so,
the point.
and that's why I also,
We'll reinforce the.
and I want to tell Andrew for letting me have this couple of minutes, because I just wanted it on the record, because I think, and it is now, my sister died in 1994. So that's 28 years ago, but
Wow.
she was my sister and I miss her to this day. Thank you.
Jason.
Damn, Trudy, hearing your story, I could relate to your sister's story, my own self. Because my own self, I suffer from mental illness. And I've been victim, my own self, of what it is of what it is to be a person suffering from mental illness and using the subway system every single day. And I'm gonna put this scenario. Me going home on a crowded 4 train and wearing a special boot because I had a foot surgery. And this woman called the police on me because I, quote unquote, touched her child. And the train was stopped at Fulton Street. The police was called. And me being on medication, and I'm doing full disclosure here, as I trust everybody here, and everybody has seen me testify in front of the MTA board for several years now. So the police came. I was transported on EMS to the emergency room inside Bellevue. And I was incommunicated for several hours with no explanation whatsoever. And the NYPD doesn't have no training whatsoever to treat people with mental illness, including the New York State of Mental Health has been dealing with this type of situation for years.
Jason, you bring up an excellent point, which I should have brought up, which was during this 3C program, the cops, cameras, and care. The care part will have mental health professionals dealing with folks who need that sort of help. It won't be police officers because they'll have the training, and that's essential, as you are just pointing out.
And Jason, let me just say, and we can talk after this because we spent a lot of time. I went through on the subway when Bill Bratton was head of the police. And there's a big story and followed by Susan Sheehan, who had written a book about my sister and my family and us and about mental illness. But after my sister died, she did it, and I'd be happy to share it with anybody who wants to read about what went on with my sister and on the subway. And only because I knew Bill Bratton that I was able to get it taken care of in a positive kind of way. But otherwise, she would have suffered, and a lot more so, because this is 30 years ago than Jason did. But Jason, I can assure you, because I monitor these things, I worry about them. And I want to hear your whole story, and I will know who to report it to also. But as Andrew said, one of the very good things about this 3C program is the care part, which is for the first time, and we've suffered from this for so long, but for the first time, having mental health professionals and giving training to the other police and state troopers and any who will be
Other uniformed services, yes.
uniform services.
Yes.
So that is something that is very, very good. But
Okay.
this is the first time that is happening since I've been associated with.
The shame is, and it's not an MTA shame, it's a city and society shame, is that it takes several unprovoked incidents.
Exactly.
And can I also say
Get to
for the
this.
record that, Jason, I admire you so much for so many things you've done, but for going public with this today. Thank you. And using us as a platform for you to go public. Thank you.
Truly. And
And
as you guys know, this very morning, very early in the morning, I had the privilege to ride the subway with New York City Transit President Rich Davy between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m.
Oh, you went to the transit birthday stop?
Yes. We started the morning at Yankee Stadium. And we ended at 72nd and Second.
Yeah.
And I was impressed by him talking to average commuters, talking to subway workers.
So you switched trains with him, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
And the same thing that I see every day, he saw it. And even we saw two homeless people sleeping in stations.
Oh, I see that all the time.
I know, Andrew, you see it all the time. I see it all the time. And he got to see it with his own eyes.
That, yes, that's the important.
Oh, no, he's seen it many times and
Well,
Yeah.
I know that we have to move on.
We do
but
have to move on.
I just want to say it so after his travels with you today.
Sure.
Sharon and I were actually at breakfast with him this morning. After he was traveling with you, and one of the things that Rich said was that one of his biggest frustrations and one of the biggest frustrations that he finds with his colleagues in transportation nationally is not being able to heal, solve health, and just solve the problem. So it's, but it feels that this is a step toward addressing some of the issues. So
it's a problem that can't be quote unquote solved.
Right.
But the fact that we are dealing with it for the first time, and I again admire what Jason has been doing and saying, is that we are going public and we don't treat it as a shame. We don't treat it as something that has to be hidden under the covers or be prosecuted. But it is a condition, a health condition that is mental rather than physical. So for everyone who is doing something with this, and I've spoken to Rich about this also as Jano, but it takes a long, long time, but at least we are, as they say, on an upward curve.
yes,
Finally.
finally. Chris,
Also, just letting you know, I know Deborah and I was gonna say is, since my mother's brother also has mental illness as well, so and there's a lot of people out there that needs the service, they need the help, and I understand what Jason, you're saying, I understand what Trudy's saying. There are a lot of people out there that also be getting help. And to be honest with you, there are times there are a lot of concerns that are they getting the help. I'm just gonna say that Adams, our mayor right now, is starting that ball, but we do need to remember that there are different types of disability out there. There are a lot of newer ones coming out that can be combined. We just need to always not to go charging sometimes at them, because some passengers there are very mean to them, and I've seen it. And they were trying to train me as well. I might have a disability, but I'm also a person. And a person needs to be treated as a respectful. Maybe they didn't take their medication, it's called reaction. But at the same time, we do need to get them help at all costs.
yes, thank you. Thanks for everybody's
I think
comments.
for everybody, and as long as this is all on the record and our concern, but as I said, we, and I'm talking about the PCAC and the TRC, we were the group that was instrumental in getting half fare for people with, they added the word severe mental illness, but the fact that we recognized it as an illness, that was from the PCAC and the TRC, and it's something we should all be proud of. And that
Thank
it's on
you.
the record.
Thank you. Let me get going because we have a couple of speakers who are on schedules today. So there will be, and I'm sure everyone has heard, cameras installed in all subway cars. That will take till early 2024 to get them all installed, but the R211s are coming with them already installed, and the new orders, which is the next topic, We have an option for hundreds more from Kawasaki. We exercise that option. We understand that delivery will be sped up. It has been fairly slow at their Lincoln, Nebraska plant, but they promised to speed it up. And we have been told if they don't get the cars here when they're supposed to, there could be liquidated damages. So we really hope that they speed it up. We need these cars. These will come camera equipped already. The cameras are invisible. Nobody will know where they are. And as many have said, you'll be watched all the time. So behave yourself.
Ron Troy asked if they were being monitored on
Real time?
Yeah, real time. And I responded in the chat that no, but that we had sent a letter.
Yes, we have asked that groups of cameras in stations and in trains be rotated and observed in real time. So nobody will know if a police officer or an MTA official is watching in real time, they can announce to somebody, we know what you're about to do. We're coming for you. Don't do it. You know, words to that effect. So I hope that they will take this. They said they would look at it.
What's doing the monitoring?
The police.
The police.
Chief Wilcox said that there are stations where that
Yeah.
already
There are
occurs.
3 locations where they're already doing that.
Or the MTA
A
police?
combination.
Oh, you mean all of the law enforcement?
Yes, yes. I would like them monitored, not constantly, but rotated in real time. So you'll never know where it's happening. But the police will know. So that's some good news on those cameras. Also, there was a new class graduated of police officers. So we will be getting many additional police officers in the system. I made a point of asking Chief Wilcox when they were assigned to a station, are they told to stand in a particular place or can they walk the station? He says, we hope and we ask them to walk and peruse the station. That doesn't mean just platforms. That means mezzanines. That means passageways. That means entrances. That means turnstiles, the whole shebang, really. You should feel, I actually had to switch trains at the 120. I went to 125th Street on the ABCD and went to the 127th Street end of the station and was crossing over to get in the opposite direction because there was a real delay on one of the trains. So I thought if I took Downtown Express, I'd save time. And there was actually 2 police officers in this really out of the way place, standing there and watching. So that was good. It's good to see. Omni is now available for half fare passengers and those who are able to utilize half fares for whatever reason. Right now, you can get on your account online and let them know you would like to transfer to Omni. They recommend that if you still have money left on your Metro card, you use that up before asking because the refund process is a little onerous and it's not right away. If you use up the card and then switch, you can start that.
Is there any way to transfer?
I think there is.
I think Rachel can help us with that.
I'm gonna speak a little bit to Omni Reduced Fare and the accessibility update, so I can address some of the stuff or now.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Rachel. We'll wait for that then. Or you want to
Okay.
do it now?
Sure. So on the spending down, it is true that we're, advising folks to spend down their MetroCard balance, but you do not have to do it before you switch to Omni. So when you switch, you go online, you say, okay, I'm reduced fare customer, 1, 2, 3, and I want my my reduced fare benefit, on this phone. That'll get activated, but it doesn't turn off your MetroCard. We're giving folks, kind of a grace period, right, to transition. So if you have whatever, a few rides left on your MetroCard, spend them down kind of, as you're going through the transition. And once you're comfortable with Omni, then you're good to go. You don't need to tell us, you don't need to, request anything. It'll be kind of a natural transition process, but we're trying to make it, comfortable for folks, right? And understand that not everybody will be comfortable saying, okay, I'm doing Omni, so here's my MetroCard that I never needed again. So yes.
Rachel, there's a question in the chat that's asking, will MetroCard holders be emailed the information about switching to Omni?
Yes, so we've started going out with that already. We have folks, we've had a form online for a number of months where folks can tell us like, hey, I've reduced fare MetroCard and I want to switch to Omni as soon as it's ready. So we're emailing all of those folks first this week. Most of those are out. And we'll go kind of in waves over the next few weeks to all the reduced fare MetroCard customers whose emails we have. So we don't have emails for all of our reduced fare MetroCard customers, but we're going to be getting the message out through advocates, through direct emails, through marketing and system. And we're kind of doing this build up approach because we know a lot of people are going to have questions and we want to be able to help them in real time. So we certainly intend to reach everybody and hopefully very soon.
Thank you. Karen, you have a question?
Yes, so keeping in mind that a lot of the people who will be using the reduced fare are older and may not feel comfortable using, I shouldn't say using technology, but having their credit card on file because they didn't have to with the old program. And so I know that there's this card that not everyone can find. What's another way that people can reload their card without having to link it to a specific credit card?
Sure. So what is available right now for specifically for reduced fare is the use your own, payment method, the credit card, the smartphone. And it's the similar to how we rolled out Omni for full fare customers. First we had that, and then we started rolling on the black and white Omni cards. If you don't have a contactless card or a phone, or you just don't want to use it, right, for the reasons you explained, that's completely fine. There's nothing the customer needs to do. If you're a reduced fare customer and you don't kind of opt into Omni during this kind of open enrollment period, we will send you a dedicated, MTA issued reduced fare Omni card, no charge. And that's something that can be reloaded. You can reload it online if you want to, but you can also reload it, at any of the retail locations, which take cash. And when we have card vending machines and stations, all of that is coming next year. So we're going out now with what we have because we know a lot of people are excited and want to use it, but there are going to be many different options. And we really want that to be clear to folks too. Like if this isn't right for you, that's okay. We want people to do payment, bring their own payment method. We think it has a lot of advantages, but it's not your only choice.
Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah, sure.
When will the fair fare Omni go into effect for Omni? Is that part of this rollout?
It is not. And I think that question came up at committee on Monday as well. So fair fares is separate. We're working with the city to connect fair fares and Omni. It is, in the pipeline, but I don't know, frankly, the, exact projected delivery date right now, okay. But it's separate from reduced fare.
I think I remember hearing that it's going to be early in 23, maybe, when employees also are going to be getting Omni cards.
Right, so maybe they'll be mailed out at the same time that the Omnis will be mailed out, as you said, the reduced fare ones.
Yeah,
just now.
Trudy.
Thank you.
This might have been just an error by the clerk or something, but in my local CVS near the checkout counter, I found Omni cards. It said for sale. And when I asked the cashier, she said, well, that's a new program from the MTA, but you have to pay upfront and you have to pay us. I didn't know. And I said, I didn't want to hold up the line by giving her a whole argument. But do you know anything about these Omni cards that are for sale?
And they're $5.
And they're $5?
Yeah, so that is the dedicated Omni card. So if if you want the kind of something that's more like today's Metro card, you don't want to use your Visa card, you don't want to use your phone, you want an actual dedicated transit, kind of transit only card. That's what's available at retail locations citywide. There are literally thousands of them, which is great, right, all over the city. And you can buy an Omni card and then you can load it up online. It's like the contactless fare payment cards they have in a lot of other cities.
Yeah, they're
I'm sorry, is the $5 a charge for the card, or is that
yes
put on the
it's
card?
The card itself.
No, it's a green fee for the card because it's this extended life.
It costs an extra $5 to get an Omni card. In other words, that is not
Correct.
dedicated to fare or anything else.
Correct. And again, I think that's pretty, it's done in a lot of other places where they have extended use cards, like in Washington and other systems. But it is something that, we've heard feedback on that it's a concern for folks.
Maybe we should go more public with that, because I, who am here, didn't know anything about it. And the public, that, and they say, wait a minute, I got to pay for a card and then just pay my fare, my regular fare. That might not make some people very happy.
But the beauty of the Omni card is it doesn't have a time
No, Andrew, I'm not saying it's bad.
No,
It's
but the
just a matter of
stripe, the Metro card has a shelf. life.
Andrew,
These are good.
I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that maybe we should let that be known that if you want to buy an Omni card, it's an additional $5.
That was,
That they've been talking about. that.
they have been talking
Yeah.
about that. That was mentioned yesterday, in fact. at
Yeah,
one
but
point.
it's the public. I will consider myself a member of the public when I go to CVS for my own purposes, and I didn't know anything about it.
I'm not surprised with CVS.
All right, let's move on. There is, you may have heard that President Davy is very concerned and very respectful of how many people are riding on weekends, and a weekend service czar, Jose LaSalle, has been appointed. I'm hopeful to get him as a speaker in the near future to speak about the initiatives that they're taking to make sure weekend travel, when there's all of these GOs going on, is working for everybody, is frequent. That the signage for all of the, I mean, people are just staring at maps and signs and everything, and they're really confused on, and there's actually more tourists here, which is great. But weekends are confusing for some. There was a time when service was not good. It has gotten better in the last few weeks for sure. Even before Mr. LaSalle was appointed, it started to get better because President Davy is well understanding how many people travel. And you heard about the record on Saturday. So we hope to get Mr. LaSalle as a future speaker. And you may have also heard that bathrooms are reopening in several stations. Yeah. It'll be 161st Yankee Stadium, 14th Street Union Square, J Street Metrotech, Flushing Main Street, Fulton Street, and 3 others yet to be named. They will be clean, they will be serviced regularly, and hopefully they will be patrolled at some point. Because we have to make them usable for the public. They have said many times they want to be able to use restrooms. And President Davy has also spoken about upgrading stations. The conditions in some stations is not great. We have some magnificent historic tile work in places that is falling down or filthy. He has begun on the concourse line, and Fordham Road on the B&D are evidence of some of the work that is going on right now. We hope he's talking about another 30 to 40 stations. We are hoping to get the list from President Davy shortly, and we'll circulate it to everybody. But if you have a station that you are aware of that is in severe need of something, either the tile work is falling down, or it looks like it hasn't been cleaned in a while, or there are other issues.
Buy tokens before the weekend.
Yeah, there's that one, buy tokens. Can you believe there's still a sign up that says that? But I'm sure we can submit these to President Davy. Yeah. So those are basically the things I wanted to read.
It's Shea Stadium.
Yeah, Shea Stadium, there you go.
On that line.
Yeah. Let's see, how are we doing for time? I guess we are in time for
No, Andrew,
Yeah.
there were 2 things that you said you were going to bring up. One of them, I think, Chris wants to talk about the lawsuit.
oh, yes, the new lawsuit. Chris, do you want to?
Yeah, because I'm
I'm sorry to interrupt, but so we have Rachel on
Oh, that's true.
for
Right.
15 minutes, and then can we talk about it afterwards?
Let's do that under new
Yes, and
business. That is new business.
and I have additional question.
Okay, sure. On my report? Okay, let's hear it.
No, I said after.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I guess I'll bring up the
Yes.
matter
Baby-
about
Rachel's talking about the
notifying,
baby shower.
or you can bring that up.
Yep, I will.
Okay.
Yeah. but-
Okay, so you may have heard about the open stroller program. We had many people speak at MTA board meetings and committee meetings about the need to be able to bring strollers on board buses. And a system has been devised where you will have seats that pop up and the strollers can be put there. Rachel Cohn, who is the deputy accessibility officer, is here to speak with us today. She's already spoken with us on a few topics. So Rachel, you're on.
Great. Thanks, Andrew, and thanks everybody for having me. Sorry that I couldn't be with you in person, but I'm recovering from COVID, so you should
Yeah, no, thank
probably
you.
happy that I'm not there in the room.
Good, at least you're recovering.
So we
Yeah,
have
it
your-
was a very mild case. I'm just fine, just trying to keep everybody safe. But appreciate the time today. Okay, so should I share my screen?
Yeah, why don't you do, I give you
Okay.
the ability to do that. You should
All
have
right,
the
it's gonna
ability
be
to do
a
that.
little wonky just for a second while I pull up the slide. So forgive the picture in picture. Okay, do folks see slides now?
Yes.
Great. So, right, so the stroller pilot was mentioned, and I'm gonna get there in a second and talk mostly about that. But just as kind of a broader update on where we are with accessibility, this is a topic I know is of great interest to PCAC, and my group has presented, a few times in the past. So just kind of a quick reminder on where we are in terms of accessibility in the capital plan, and then I'll talk about the programmatic side. So as folks are probably aware, right, we had a real historic milestone this summer when we reached an agreement with the advocates, many of whom are in this picture, around several lawsuits related to ADA accessibility to our stations. And we're really, as an agency, we're proud of this agreement, and we're proud of what it means. Not just the work we're doing in the current capital plan, but for the first time having a long-term plan to get to system-wide accessibility on the subway system is just a historic marker. I think that's kind of worth putting a note on. So the agreement lays out a 30-year plan to get to at least 95% of subway stations across the city and across the system being accessible. I don't want to spend too much time on this today, but just again as sort of a quick reminder, when we talk about a station being accessible, we're not just talking about an elevator or ramp, right? There's a lot more work that goes into these projects and benefits of these projects far beyond folks with mobility disabilities or the stroller users, the luggage carriers that are using our elevators. So our accessible stations have a level boarding area, and I know Chris and Deborah are on the call and will remind us about that. Tactile warning strips, again, a topic that's of a lot of interest with all the current safety concerns, as well as enhancements to signage and the accessibility of features around the station. So we're proud that we have 140 accessible stations today. We're certainly moving in the right direction, but we have a lot more work to do. And we're fully committed to it, right? Even during COVID and with all of the budget and operational constraints, there are 23 ADA projects across the city that are in construction right now, and we have plans to award several additional projects by the end of 2022. So we're making really good progress on the 70 stations in the current capital plan. We do have concerns, right? I mean, as everybody's hearing about all the time at committee and board and in the press, the success of this capital plan is, contingent on congestion pricing and funding the capital plan. But we are fully committed to the ADA work. We're pursuing, every possible funding stream to move these projects forward. And we feel confident, with the progress we've made on the capital plan to date when it comes to ADA stations. So that's just a quick update on where we're at. But as Andrew mentioned, right, what we really wanted to talk about today is the more programmatic side. So the capital projects, the elevators, the big kind of flashy things get a lot of attention, and as well they should. They're huge projects, huge benefits, huge money involved. But my group and all of our colleagues across the MTA, we're also working every day to change policies and programs and do things to make our system more accessible that don't cost billions of dollars and sometimes don't cost any money at all. And we think that work is really important as well. So one of the changes, the policy changes that we made about a year ago now that we think has been a real success story is changing the policy around the auto gate. So in this picture, you'll see a mom pushing a stroller who may look familiar as your presenter today. This is a still from a little promotional video that we made last year. It used to be the case that to use the auto gate, to be able to dip your Metro card and have this gate open for you automatically if you can't use a turnstile for any reason, you needed to apply and get a specially encoded reduced fare auto gate Metro card. Now that, worked for some customers, but it doesn't work if you're a stroller, somebody with a stroller or a visitor with a disability or somebody with luggage or a bike who doesn't need reduced fare, who's not eligible for reduced fare, or just might not want to get a special card. So we looked at this and we were at that time, getting ready to install and light up all the Omni validators on the auto gates. And we're able to make a policy change working with, teams across the MTA so that now any MetroCard other than a paper single ride ticket and any Omni payment device can be used to open the auto gate. And we see thousands and thousands of customers a day that are validly paying at the auto gate to enter the station now that didn't have that access before. We're looking closely, right, at the concerns around fare evasion and the use of the gate. That's a real problem agency-wide. But on balance, we think this is a kind of simple step that we could take that's a win for accessibility and for broadening our definition of what accessibility is. That again, it's not just about kind of baseline ADA compliance, though that's important and essential, but about all the steps that we can take to make the system feel comfortable and welcoming, and like a place that all of our riders want to ride. And on a similar note, the open stroller pilot, which was the topic that prompted this update today. So, as Andrew described, right, if you're a customer who's trying to travel on the bus with a baby in a stroller, the policy today and still on most of our routes, right, is that you are supposed to fold up your stroller before you get on the bus. That means taking out the kid, carrying all your stuff, blah, blah, blah. And it's, as we've heard from many people, a real barrier to access for many customers. And it's can be an impediment to service to other customers on the bus. Slower boarding, more things in the way, et cetera. So we heard from a lot of people that this was a challenge. We also heard from a lot of folks in the disability community very concerned about potential conflicts for priority seating, and we understand that, of course. So our approach was we pulled together a working group that included representatives from the parent and caregiver community, representatives from the disability community, and bus operators. We had a bus operator from each of the 6 unions across the city. We met about 10 times throughout the spring and the summer, including doing demos, getting on a bus, looking at seating, looking what other cities do. And we developed a pilot, and we've been running this pilot now for about a month, where we retrofitted about 150 of our buses. And now each of these buses has a designated open stroller parking spot. And that's either, as you can see in these photos, 2 seats next to each other that can flip up, that are kind of sized to a standard size stroller. Or on some buses, we actually removed either 1 seat or 2 seats, depending on the configuration of the bus, to create a little kind of, safe stroller parking area. So there's no, there's no overlap between the stroller area and priority seating. We think that's absolutely essential. And we did this by keeping as many seats as possible while also creating this dedicated space. You can see on this slide the routes that are part of this open stroller pilot. We thought it was really important to have at least 1 route in each borough, and these are in service now. So if you ride any of these routes, the BX23, B1, M31, Q12, Q50, S53, or S93, you should see every bus on that route have a decal on the outside with a stroller icon and a decal on the inside, which indicates where the open stroller parking area is on that bus. So we've got these buses out there at mta.info/stroller. We have more information on the pilot. We have a really nice little video, and we're out on the routes now. Getting ahead of myself. We actually had members of my team yesterday and today at public libraries in South Brooklyn, talking to parents and caregivers who ride the B1. So we're getting out into communities, talking to families, telling them about the pilot and hearing their feedback. We've heard from operators, we've heard from riders. Response has generally been pretty positive so far, but we really need, and we love PCAC's help in getting the word out about this pilot in these communities, so we can really hear from our customers how this is working for them, what benefits they're seeing, what, if any, issues they're seeing around this open stroller pilot. Our intent is to run it for about 5 more months. We're collecting data, every week, and then evaluate if this is something we think can be expanded onto other buses, or if there are tweaks that we need to make to the approach to make it work better. So I had a few slides on Omni for reduced fare, but I think we really covered most of that. It was announced this Monday at Transit Committee, kind of the official, public facing launch that reduced fare customers can switch from MetroCard to Omni. So if you have a reduced fare MetroCard today, and that's over 1 million customers, you can go online and use this digital assistant tool and put your reduced fare benefit on a contactless payment device. And that brings all the benefits of Omni, right? Including fare capping. You don't need to, worry about a lost or damaged or expired Metro card. And we're already seeing, thousands of customers make the switch, which is great. The video and our online resources walk through this in more detail, but you can see here, this is the Omni Digital Assistant, and there's a nice button, switch from reduced fare MetroCard to Omni, that walks you through the steps. It's pretty quick and easy. And our call center can also answer questions and assist with this process. And then I think maybe leave this slide up for a moment. Happy to take questions. But our team is here. Yuvraj from my team, I think, is on the call. Many of you know Sarah Berry or Howie Levine, who was formerly with Government Community Relations. But we're happy to be here as a sounding board, as a resource at any time for all of you and your colleagues and the groups you represent. We have a lot of information on our accessibility page on the MTA website.
Yeah, second in command.
We have a monthly newsletter, and we have quarterly meetings with our advisory committee. So if folks are interested in kind of following along a little bit more with the day-to-day, we'd really encourage you to plug in those ways and let us know how else we can help.
Thank you. Trudy.
Hi, Rachel. I discussed this with Q already, and I don't know if he brought it up to you, but there is a whole other age group that ride buses and subways.
Their own strollers.
And many have two things, either if they can afford them or they get them, have walkers, which also take up the same kind of space. And then some of us, like me, cannot go shopping without a shopping cart. And the shopping cart also doubles as a walker for those of us who are too cheap to buy walkers or find that it serves the same purpose. I take a lot of buses as well as subways. And some bus drivers who are very nice and understanding say, I'm supposed to tell you to fold that up. And I say, but I got all these shop bags in here filled with groceries. What am I supposed to do? And the same thing, but especially for people who cannot get around without walkers. So I am wondering, it's wonderful that you've done this for strollers, and I think that is marvelous. But what about shopping carts and walkers?
So appreciate the feedback. It's a great point. I think that, space on the bus is like, in some ways, the fundamental challenge of the bus. Well, space on the street and space on the bus. So a couple things. I would say, by policy, and as you said, right, operators in the street, they're doing their best. They deal with the real world scenario. By policy, you should never be told that you need to fold your walker to get on the bus. It's a mobility device. You're allowed to bring it on the bus. And that is the policy around walkers. One of the things we've done to try to create more space and alleviate some of those concerns is all of our new buses that are going into service now, and this includes about 800 that are already in service, have more of these flip-up seats. So excuse me, the aisle-facing seats at the front of the bus have a fixed seat, a flip seat, a fixed seat, a flip seat. And the point of that design is that you could sit next to, your walker, whether it's, you can fold it or not, or have space for something next to you so that it's not in the aisle, but that, we're kind of creating more options for people. So that's one of the things we're looking at is, more flexible and flip up seats on bus that if they're not being, used by somebody with a walker, they could be flipped down and it's another seat, but it creates more options and gets stuff out of the aisle, right? Because that's really the challenge, one of the challenges with other customers. I think full shopping carts are more of a challenge. It's just harder to find space for that. And I don't know that we have a great solution for that, but I think the flexible seats are a step in the right direction. And, we've heard positive feedback that it can be really helpful in terms of like some of that front of the bus aisle crowding issue.
Well, for seniors especially, shopping carts really do serve the same purpose as walkers. I'll just speak for me. That's what I use when I go shopping, I am also using it as a walker, and I don't have to have a walker, all the time. But I've heard this from a lot of seniors.
Yeah.
Who must use shopping carts. They just can't carry bags or shopping bags or anything anymore. So they just do that. And if there is some way of maybe putting them in the same category as strollers or walkers or whatever, because they really are, it's not just that people are lazy and don't want to carry bundles or anything like that. So if there's some way of considering shopping carts, and as I say, most bus drivers are really very nice about it, and they don't, but there are a couple who say, lady, take all your stuff out and fold up that cart. You can't have it on here otherwise. It's happened to me twice.
Sure, and it's and I sympathize with the position the operator's in, right? They're trying to follow the rules and kind of be fair to everybody. I've had it too, right? An operator tell me to, before I worked at the MTA, say, you got to fold your stroller. And I said, there's nobody else on the bus, but they don't know who's coming on next, and so it's tough, and it's feedback well taken. I just to say transparently, the pilot we're currently running does not address carts, but it is certainly feedback well taken.
Thank you. Chris?
Just to, because Rachel, Rachel's Chris, you can't see me because I'm over here. Oh, the
I can
camera's
see you
now coming to me now. The one thing I just to let, and I agree with Trudy, is with the shopping carts, we do see the small ones get on the bus and they do share the single seat area also when there's no walker or baby stroller. The bigger issue is the bigger shopping carts that causes problems, because this is also on that B1 pilot, as I mentioned it to you about it, because, and it's a really big issue, because I understand people have to go food shopping, but a smaller cart is a little more better because it's less room and it doesn't take off the whole aisle of the bus. And it's really stressful on the B1 bus as well as the other routes as well. So there is something, I know we've been bringing this up to ACTA, but at the same time, as Deborah's been trying to use her walker on all of those buses, you have people like to fight each other, senior against senior, or ones with a blue with disability. But at the same time, the driver cannot leave the stop because if you're not gonna offer them a seat and that person is not disabled or not a senior, they cannot, get access to that seating area. So there is still some issues going on, and definitely on the B1, because with the stroller pilot going on, you're seeing people hanging around there, standing, and they're not, have nothing to do with a walker, stroller, wheelchair, or anything.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Karen, you have a question?
Yeah, so I know a lot of these questions are more questions, a lot of these solutions are retroactive, and I'm curious to what the MTA is looking for in bus design moving forward, just acknowledging different accessibility and mobility issues and just the changing nature of how we use transit. And so, we're trying to retrofit an existing bus. And I just want to know how we're looking towards the future, if we're considering other designs, other types of buses that can better meet our needs.
So sure. So I mentioned the flip up seats, and that's one of the major things. But those new buses that have the flip up seats. So two things. First, we did this first flip up seat configuration with the fixed and the flip side by side, and now we're actually looking at making all four of those seats that can flip up. Just because we've, the more that we do it, the more that we realize that the flexibility and the optionality is helpful for so many different people in so many different kind of situations. So we are looking to do more with flexible seating on our future bus design. I think that's something you'll see more of. The other thing that our newer buses have that precedes the stroller pilot is slightly wider doors. So to make boarding easier, including for people with mobility devices, especially for people with mobility devices. As well as more like a stripe, high color contrast stripe on the front ramp to make it easier to align, if you're boarding with a mobility device. So we've done a few things like that to try to make boarding and alighting more easier and, more comfortable and convenient for folks. We're looking a lot at seating, as I mentioned. All of our new buses come with digital information screens, which have, stop and other information in both audio and visual formats, which is a great enhancement. So those are a few of the things that are currently in the pipeline, that are on new buses and will be on future buses. But if you have other thoughts, other ideas, things that you've seen in other cities, please send our way.
Rachel, what we've actually been able to do for many years is when new subway cars were being planned, we got a look at the pilot of them and made suggestions. Hopefully, we can do that with the next fleet of buses so that we can help solve some of these issues.
I have a question.
Yeah, Bert.
I was on one of the new buses the other day, which has those staggered flip-up seats. Who's responsible for flipping them down?
Customer.
It's only customers. I mean, the driver doesn't have to get out now and flip.
No,
He used to.
No,
only.
They're
Only
easy.
for wheelchairs, no, only
Only
for
the
wheelchairs, to tie the wheelchairs in, the
Okay.
big ones. Am I right, Rachel?
Yes, absolutely. The operator is responsible for securing somebody who uses a wheelchair. That's like the 3 seats that flip up in the front together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these kind of individual seats for, a walker or, a folded up stroller or cart, they're designed so that a customer should be able to kind of flip them up and down on their own.
Can you repeat that? The driver is
Pretty.
definitely responsible for people with wheelchairs.
With wheelchairs, yeah.
or,
Yes.
Absolutely. Exercise.
Because they have to, as you said, Trudy, right? They have to get out to do the securement, and the lifting or the lowering of the seat is part of that process.
Jason, you'll be the last one.
Yeah, Rachel, hi, Jason Anthony here. Quick question, why during the pilot, none of the SBS routes weren't tested? Because I often use the M34 Select bus service from 34th Street and Broadway 6th Avenue to 34th Street and 2nd Avenue. And that bus is always crowded. And we have people with mothers with strollers, people with walkers, canes, all types of things. And also the M15 northbound and southbound. And I wonder myself, why wasn't these 2 routes or any of the SBS routes tested in this pilot?
So we looked at I note the routes, and I know somebody put in the chat, the B61 as another suggested route. I live in Prospect Heights, so I know Stroller Slope very well. We looked at a number of different factors when selecting the routes, and we were looking for like diversity in the areas, right? So as I said, we have at least one route in each borough. Different kinds of like attractions that are served by the routes, schools, parks, hospitals, the beaches. We were trying to get a really good sampling of all the different kinds of areas that our buses serve. We're well aware that, this is something that would be, we hope, right, would be useful for customers on every single bus route in the city, including those that you mentioned, Jason. So the intent was not to, find every route that has stroller users, but rather to be able to get a pilot up and running quickly, and to do so on routes that we thought would, provide good data, right, on how this works in different areas of the city for different customer groups, et cetera. And we also had the constraint of many of our buses run on different routes. We were looking for routes that use the same buses all the time, so that we could ensure that, like on the B1, for example, all of the buses are outfitted with the stroller space. Because without that, we felt like if customers are guessing, am I going to get a stroller bus today or not, it wouldn't really be a very effective way to to understand the experience and run the pilot. So we weren't trying to exclude any specific area, route type, but we were trying to meet kind of all the criteria I just named as best we could with this initial approach.
All right.
I have one question.
All right, Stuart, you'll be the last.
Really quick.
We must move on. Yes.
I ride the B1 and I would consider myself pretty observant of things that are going on. Totally oblivious to the pilot. Don't see the stickers. Haven't seen the flip up seats either. And I usually sit near the front of the bus. But my question is, how are you advertising this pilot? Because I haven't seen any signage on the bus or along the route.
Sure. So the B1 is interesting. I think Howie Levine from my team, who's on the call, was down there yesterday riding it and raised this. I think because it's an articulated bus, the placement of the seats is a little different and perhaps not as obvious. But there should be a decal near the front door on every single B1 bus with a stroller icon. So that's one of the things, right? Decals are one of the ways. I get it, it's not the only way. There should, and I emphasize should, also be pamphlets at the front of the bus that are announcing the pilot. And I see you nodding, and we'll follow up on that. We've been in the process of getting them out. We're still rolling all this out. So the short answer is, decals on the bus, pamphlets, announcements, web, like on the web. And as I said earlier, getting into communities, and talking to folks at schools, libraries, community centers. So it's a work in progress. The lack of penetration on the B1 is noted and helpful feedback. I hear you. But we're trying to get out there in a number of different ways.
Thank you very much. And how long is it going to last, the pilot?
We're about 3 or 4 weeks into what will be a 6-month pilot. So
6
until the
months.
spring.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Rachel. This has been very illuminating. We wish you the best of luck on this, and hopefully the results, the feedback will be shared with the transit committee, I assume.
Yes, we'll probably do like an interim report after a few months and then a final. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you for your help on the Omni pilot as well.
Sure, and thanks for your help getting the word out about Omni Reduced Fare. We'd appreciate that as well.
Absolutely.
All right.
We have, yes, indeed. Our next item is one of great interest to many of us. We've all heard about QueensLink, and we've heard about, the mayor's plan for what was an abandoned railroad right-of-way from the Rockaway Beach branching off of the Long Island Railroad main line in the area of Rego Park and going down through Forest Park and to the Rockaways. This rail line holds great promise, much as the IBX will utilize, the New York Connecting Railroad and all of that existing track. The QueensLink would also utilize existing track and could give you actually a really fast ride from Penn Station or Grand Central Madison. I hate to use that name, but to JFK in 22 minutes. I mean, it would be amazing. It would also connect lots of parts of Queens that do not have subway access now. And here to explain a lot of this and explain where we go from here and how we can advocate for it is Rick Horan. Rick, thank you so much. I think you have Andrew Lynch with you as well. So whoever's going to speak, please take it away.
Will do. Thank you very much, Andrew. Appreciate your time and the time of the PCAC today. Thanks, Lisa, for setting this up. Andrew Lynch, our Chief Design Officer, is here, and he's prepared to share some slides as we may need them during the course of the conversation. Miriam Bensman is also a member of our team. She was able to join us today. She's our senior advisor and community liaison. And so we're all looking forward to, more of an informal conversation, to share information. And as you said, Andrew, perhaps at the end of it, figure out a path forward, how we can work together to bring this project closer to reality. Anyway, just to set the stage, we were disappointed in the mayor's announcement on September 16th. He seemed to have done that without any community input at all. So it wasn't just public transit that took a hit, but rather, democracy. It seemed that it was just this one council member that wanted a park built, and apparently the Trust for Public Land and the Friends of Queensway had some effective lobbyists. And but we don't think until a park is built and a rail isn't, we do not believe that this fight is over. And in fact, we believe that now the direction is clear. People who care about transit equity and environmental justice can no longer sit on the sidelines. If we do nothing, a park will be on this very valuable right of way, and we're likely to lose it forever. And just one last reminder before I turn this over to Andrew. This is, as the rendering on the screen shows, it's not just connecting two separate parts of the subway system, but also including neighborhood parks along the way. So out of the 47 acres that the right of way consumes, a full 33 acres can be used for community parks if that's what the local communities would like to use it for. I don't know if what we'd like to maybe ask before Andrew starts is, does the committee have any specific questions or things that we should address first, so that we make maximum use of our limited time?
Shows the presentation.
Is there a map?
Yeah, maybe,
That'll be in the presentation.
yeah, if you can
Sharon.
show us what it looks like.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, go take it away, Andrew.
Yes. So, like Rick said, thank you so much for having us here. The Queens Link is just to really sort of clarify what we're talking about here. This project developed out of the MTA's 2019 Rockaway Beach Branch feasibility study. The MTA's feasibility study was very sort of focused on the two options, either Long Island Railroad or New York City Transit, and it was much more focused on sort of getting riders to Howard Beach, JFK Airport. We are a little bit different in that we're much more focused on using this line for local subway service and local community parks. We sort of came to that conclusion based on the MTA's own data, based on the potential service patterns. Long Island Railroad didn't provide what we felt was enough service for this area, and the New York City subway alternative had a better forecast for ridership. The MTA, and this is pre-pandemic numbers, found that this line, just based on the new stations, would see about 47,000 daily riders. We feel that number is a little bit low because, and we've spoken to the MTA planning department since about this, but we feel those numbers are a bit low because they don't take into consideration potential existing riders that would use the line to transfer. The link in Queens Link is using this 3.5 mile abandoned right of way to literally connect two parts of the existing subway network with one another, thereby creating more capacity on the network, creating more resiliency on the network, allowing people to get around the network in a way that is not possible today. Riders in better served parts of the city, downtown Brooklyn or Manhattan, can sort of use the subway network as a grid and sort of get around relatively easily with high frequency. But in the outer boroughs, you don't have that possibility. There are a lot of branches that just do not have the capacity to have high levels of service, and there are there's certain neighborhoods that if you're not going where that train's going, you're out of luck. And so that's why we feel this is a really exciting use of this infrastructure. We have, over the last year and a half, engaged in a lot of political outreach, a lot of community outreach. We found that there's a lot of people, in New York that maybe have heard of this, or maybe have heard of the Queensway, or maybe they have heard of something else in the past and they're confusing it with something. The IBX, while we're all rather fond of outer borough transit, doesn't really serve this corridor in the same way that it serves, crossing Brooklyn. And so because of that, people have misconstrued the two projects. But we have, like I said, we've been engaged in a lot of outreach, and we've been able to educate a lot of people as to what this is and the benefits of this. Obviously, you guys are heavily transit focused, but the values of this project go much beyond that. Our main sort of goals behind this is transit justice, environmental justice, economic justice, and education justice. Obviously, with climate change being such a big issue, expanding mass transit, making mass transit more reliable is going to help shift a lot of cars off the road. And some people like to say, oh, well, with electric cars, we won't have the problem of pollution. It's like, well, okay, there might be air pollution that we don't have, but there's still a lot of runoff. There's still oils, there's still plastics that are gonna, that those cars create on the roads, and those are gonna seep into the local water sources, like Jamaica Bay. And so this, I mean, I couldn't think of a better sort of like 1-2 punch of, you know, taking cars off the road and cleaning up the local environment, such as a train that, you know, runs through an environmental protected area. So, you know, the value of this link is that it's literally the only north-south rail connection in all of Queens. Every rail line goes to Manhattan, or it goes to downtown Brooklyn before it goes to Manhattan. And so that leaves a lot of people wanting for a better way to get around, and most of the time they're going to drive if they have the ability to. And so that's why Queens Boulevard and Woodhaven Boulevard and Van Wyck Expressway are choked with traffic. I mean, let alone you know, the Belt Parkway. And so this is a way to directly address that. The economic justice that this provides would be the ability to get to your existing job quicker, but it would also mean that you now have abilities to get to other jobs that maybe weren't available to you, with the long-term ability to, you know, get higher income or save time. I mean, what can you do with your time if you weren't sitting in traffic, or you know, taking an hour and a half to get to work? And so there's a lot of north-south job sort of commuting that happens in Queens. We had run some numbers, this again, pre-pandemic numbers, based on jobs and commuting times in Southern Queens versus Northern Queens and Midtown. And we found that potentially 68% of commuters from Southern Queens would see a reduction in their commute from Southern Queens to Northern Queens and Midtown via the Queens Link. That's insane. That's not a small number. That really shows the potential of this type of connection. And lastly, one of the most interesting things that we heard from a lot of people was their stories of when they had to go to school, when they had to go to high school or college, and they had to take, you know, 2 buses to a train or something like that. This is a story that came up time and time again. And so people, you know, they have this personal connection with traveling a long ways to go to school. Like with a job, you can sort of choose where you go, but sometimes schools, you don't have that choice. And so, you know, Queensboro President Donovan Richards was one of the first people to talk about how he had to take like 2 buses to get to school. And he had to go up Woodhaven Boulevard. So this is something that would help a lot of kids. And if, you know, you're not stuck in hours-long commute, you can get better sleep, you can be more productive, and you can be a better student, be a better worker. So these are the types of things we are really focused on in how we present this project to local communities. So it's not just like, oh, it'd be fun if this train went here or it'd be faster. This is how this type of project can really elevate a person, can really help their daily lives. We, like Rick said, and this is something that I want to really sort of drive home here, that I think is lost in when people talk about this project, is this is both a dual rail and park project. We are not against parks. We fully understand that in a city as large as New York, there's a city on an archipelago, there's not a lot of extra space for parks. And so the ability to find new parkland is difficult. And that's why we understand sort of why the Queensway has been so just as passionate as we are about using this land. The problem is when you're trying to develop a park that sits in the way almost intentionally of potential transit, as the Queensway is designed like the High Line, so it would be, the parkway would be on top of the rail bed. We have looked around the country and looked around the world at various other projects that have incorporated park space and transit to show that it's not only possible, it's almost rote at this point. But New York City, being so poor at investing in its infrastructure, leaves a lot of people who don't realize what's possible. So what I'd like to sort of point out with QueensLink is right now we are a concept. We are a concept of how to integrate a park and a train. Our next step is asking for the MTA and the state and the city to pursue this project, we feel that it would work on the economic grounds, and I'll get to the cost in a little bit, but a lot of the renderings that we show are just sort of the different possibilities, and they are not finalized products. And so that's why we maybe have different ideas that might be a little bit confusing. And I just want to point that out is, again, we are just trying to show the different ways that what we are asking for is possible. With the Queensway, sort of in the Forest Hill section, there is plenty of room on the right of way to incorporate park space and transit in a variety of different ways. The embankment itself is about 100 feet wide. And while it's overgrown right now, there's plenty of space on both sides to either have a walking path or a bike path. The other alternative is in the sections that we might need to build a new elevated guideway, we can have the park space underneath it. And then there's sections that the MTA identified would need to be tunneled. And obviously, if you build a tunnel, you can use the space on top as parks. So that's our concept there. In the south, where there's existing 4-track viaduct, the structure itself is in pretty bad shape. We took an engineer to look at it, and we found some structural deficiencies there. And the MTA's own report showed that it would probably need to be rebuilt. And so we looked at a couple of different options for what could possibly we do with that space there. It's a lot smaller than up in the north. And originally we had this idea of building sort of like open space below the tracks, but in our conversations with community groups, a lot of people pointed out that the viaduct itself today is used to house a lot of small businesses. Now, most of these businesses are auto body related, paint shops, kind of, heavy industry type of thing. And that might not be the healthiest for a neighborhood to have that type of industry there. But again, those are local jobs. And so we were able to find alternatives such as this is a project up in Lynn, Massachusetts, underneath a existing commuter rail line, which would keep the spaces, the retail spaces, active underneath the viaduct. And so you could create, well, maybe not a park, an active open space alongside the train, underneath the train, as the train's active overhead. And so, again, these are just what we're trying to show here is a lot of things that people didn't think were possible with this project are actually very possible and have been done elsewhere. We have been focused a lot on the community outreach and listening to the communities as we design this project. The number one thing is sort of quality of life. This line has been abandoned for 60 years, and people who have lived along that line for a very long time are used to, they're quiet. And even if they support mass transit and are environmentally sort of focused, it's different when it's something literally in your backyard. And so we've been listening to their concerns and tried to find ways to design this project around that. The number one thing that we think would work for this project is like a sound wall, which you see along highways. These were just recently installed along the third track, Long Island Railroad third track. And so we could build something like this that would not be intrusive. It would block the trains from the homes that are adjacent to the rail line, keep sound down, and it would also keep people out of other people's backyard. It would add an element of safety. But this is something that we really need to sort of show the local community a little bit more of. So I want to talk about cost. As some of you are probably aware, when the MTA released its feasibility study on this project in 2019, the headline was that it would cost $8 billion. And that's pretty much the only thing people focused on. We decided to get into the numbers and to understand what was really going on. Over the pandemic, we were fortunate enough to raise some capital and hire a third-party consulting firm, transportation engineering consulting firm, which looked at the numbers. The MTA was also, thankfully they included a broken down budget in their feasibility study so we could go through these numbers. And so that's what we're showing. What we're showing is that the hard costs are about $1.8 billion for a project like this. It was the soft costs, which were completely blown out of proportion. There are certain algorithms which the Federal Transportation Administration would use if they were going to judge a project like this. They're going to ask an agency such as the MTA to cost out something. Soft costs are calculated in a certain way, and this is standard along all mega projects, if you will. Second Avenue, 7th Train, all those things. They all had soft costs. But there's a sort of a way to calculate them, and the MTA, with their $8 billion number, did not calculate them in any sort of rational way, and these numbers were blown way out of proportion. Now, we don't know why, but we do know that it did happen. And so what we found was if we were to recalculate the cost estimate, it would be closer to $3.5 billion. Now, these are 2019 numbers. We don't really know what's happening with inflation right now. So we have to be honest about that. But this is just to really drive the point home that like the concept works. It's about moving that concept to the next phase, designing it, understanding what the real costs are really going to be like, and being honest about them. And once we have an idea of that, then we can understand how this is all going to be paid for. So that's the quick and dirty, if you will, about this project.
Why don't you throw the map up, Andrew, that shows the IBX?
Oh yeah.
Next to
there we go. So just so we have an understanding of what we're talking about here, because the two projects are similar, but they serve different areas. The IBX is much more inter-Queens, Brooklyn, and cross Brooklyn, where the Queens Link is across town Queens line. But it's a lot shorter, and instead of running on it being like a single train, this would be we are proposing an extension of the M train, the New York City subway, as a local line. There are a couple reasons that we decided on that. The first being that the existing provisions that were built into the Queens Boulevard subway in the 1930s are only built off of the local track, and so connecting this line to the subway as it was designed would only be possible off the local track. There are two local trains, as you know, the M and the R. If this was to be an R train extension, it would make the R the longest train in the system. So we just felt that the M was kind of a better fit in terms of overall length and service patterns, and then where it serves. So, but for us, it doesn't really matter what the name of the train is. It's the connection, it's the link, and the connections that it provides that is the most important thing. So with that, I think we can open it up to any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. I was going to ask you, as you're probably well aware, the M on weekends only goes between Metropolitan Avenue and Delancey, Essex.
Absolutely.
So I was wondering if the M was the best selection for this. But obviously, if it goes all the way to the Rockaways, they would not have it only going to Delancey, Essex. That would be ridiculous.
Right. It would be ridiculous. And I would like to also point out, this is a question that we got a lot, is we have been asked where the M would go. Would it go to Rockaway Park? Would it go to Far Rockaway? That all of those types of questions are answered by more closer ridership studies, which would be part of, like an environmental impact statement, which is we have back in August sent out a letter with 17 signatures of local city, state, federal politicians and a couple community boards asking the governor and the mayor to consider an EIS for this project. And so questions like that, we're happy to leave until the next stage. Like I said, it's really just about making that connection, and then the rest of those details can be filled in later.
Hey, Andrew Lynch, can you talk a bit about the fact that bringing the M down to Rockaway would free up some capacity on Queens Boulevard?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's we're getting in the weeds a little here, and so if what I am about to say is confusing to people, just let me know, and I'll do my best to kind of keep it simple. As some of you might have heard, one of the things that we've heard from the MTA over the years is that the Queens Boulevard line is at capacity, and that is technically true based on how they run trains now. The issue, when you look at it closer, is that express trains are run about 30 trains an hour. 30 trains an hour, and local trains are only run at 20 trains an hour. And that is due to a number of bottlenecks on the M and the R, but primarily it's due to the fact that Forest Hills 71st Ave Continental Station is a bad place to turn around trains. And the local trains can't run any quicker, any at higher frequency to get through that station. And so the thing is, it's because it's a station and it's not the tunnels, it's not the signals that exist. That means that if we were to extend the M train south, we would be removing half of the local trains that run to Forest Hills right now.
There's a copy.
That opens up the possibility of returning the G train to Forest Hills as it once ran there before 2001, when the V train was created. And so what this in essence does is not only creates the north-south connection in Queens, but it adds capacity on the local line in along Queens Boulevard, and the G train being extended creates this Brooklyn Queens crosstown connection in its own right. And so that's what I mean is, like, by building this line, you add capacity in other areas of the system that if this line was sort of by itself the way the IBX is, it wouldn't be possible.
Okay, you're also, of course, taking into account that both Queens Boulevard East and West are getting CBTC, which will improve their capacity.
Yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that they can't turn any more trains at Forest Hill. That's not
Does this map suggest that the branch off to the south would be south of 63rd Drive or just before 63rd Drive?
It would be. Let me go to this one here. This is 63rd Drive. The branch off would happen after 63rd.
After 63rd, okay.
63rd and 67th. That's where the provisions are. These existing empty tunnels that were built in the 1930s for such a extension south.
Got it. Thank you.
Andrew?
Yeah, Stuart.
Like 2.5 questions. The first thing has to do with permissions. So if this was to become a reality, you would still need, just to clarify for the board here, you would still need to go through a ULURP process and City Planning Commission. I'm asking is, it's not the MTA's decision because they did not renew their option to use the line. So it's reverted back to the city, that portion along Woodhaven Boulevard. But if this were to advance, you would still need the city council, the planning commission, ULURP process.
I don't know if we need ULURP. The reason being that this land is, as you pointed out, is city owned, but it is zoned for transportation. There is one now, however, there is one section through Forest Park.
It's a park, right? Yeah.
To the park. This is also one of the reasons that we think it makes sense to use the land along the right of way that we don't need for transit to replace that lost parkland. But because it's already zoned properly, it probably doesn't need to go through the ULURP process. It would need an environmental impact statement, obviously, but we're not talking about like rezoning something for it.
Okay, but the park piece, that was really what I was getting at also. So there are a lot of hurdles on that piece with permissions.
There are hurdles, but there are opportunities.
Yes. Now, this wasn't the question, but this is the half question, and I'll get to the last one. So when you went through costs and soft costs, those costs are only talking about restoration of rail services, right?
Right.
Have we estimated what the city's hit would be if there would be park improvements or the installation of park facilities or the landscaping costs for parks?
This was not included in the MTA study. However, there was a small section which addressed it and said that what we're sort of talking about is possible, that they wouldn't need the entire right of way for the rail. The cost estimate for the Queens Way, I believe it's something like $120 million, and that is 150, something like that. And it's going through the entire 3.5 miles. And so while we don't understand what the cost would be, part of that is due to the fact that we have two competing ideas. And we have, and just, I want to be clear, we have reached out to the Friends of the Queensway. We've had a number of meetings with them in an effort to try and figure out a way for both of our projects to move forward together. And they have had absolutely zero interest with working with us, which is not surprising. It's kind of what we expected. We have heard from the governor, no, not the governor. We have heard from the mayor and Jano Lieber specifically about this, that they are promoting the park with the understanding that there will be space left over for rail. That was when they announced that at the press conference for the Queensway. That was the first time that we had heard anything like that from either side. And we had yet to see any design that would, from the Queensway, that would incorporate space for trains. We have provided a lot of different options, so we know it's possible, but we've not heard anything from them, and so we remain skeptical until we see any hard plan. So a lot of that is really just going to be based on how they can design the park with both things there. But
yeah, practically speaking, though, sorry for interrupting, Andrew. Practically speaking, the only way to integrate a rail line and parkland is to do it together.
The guideway option, right? The guideway option is really what you're talking about.
It depends. There are, let me see if I can zoom back up there. The problem here is that the width of the right of way changes in location. So in the north, you have a lot more space to work with. So you don't necessarily need the guideway.
Right.
In the south, you have a lot less space to work with. Right. And so you need the guideway, or you need like I showed like a viaduct with space underneath it, something like that.
Right.
But point is, there are creative solutions. You know, there are no things that would prevent both of these things from happening.
But you can't build a park and then add a guideway afterwards without destroying the park.
Yeah, what we were trying to avoid is one of our outreach coordinators put it nicely. This is like landscaping before building the house, because then you're going to have to rip the whole thing out. So.
Right. So that's why I'm asking about the costs of the park component. So, okay. And the last, it's sort of, yes, meaning there's a lot more research to happen on that issue with the true cost, because there's going to be a hit to the city, and that also requires legislative approval. The last thing is, we talk in this forum about better utilization of the Atlantic branch of the Long Island Railway. That historically, as you know, had connections to the Rockaway branch. If it's been relegated to what they call a scoot now, and even if it is a scoot, it's still 15 to 17 minutes from the terminal to Jamaica Station. So I'm looking at the map, and it was nice to circulate it to the group before the meeting. Are there any thoughts about establishing again a physical connection or a transfer? Because for Brooklyn riders that are in downtown Brooklyn, it would be a significant savings. And also, not all businesses and employment is in Manhattan. So for those riders, that live along Woodhaven Boulevard or in Elmhurst or the other areas served by the old right of way, being able again to connect to the Atlantic branch would be something important in my mind. And I think the minds of the others here too.
If you look at this map right here, this is one of the proposals, is to reopen that Atlantic Ave station and have that transfer there. That is obviously it's a nice to have feature. It would enhance the usability of this connection. It would allow people to get downtown Brooklyn faster, but more importantly, it would allow people to reverse commute into Jamaica and Long Island, which is really good too. Are
you including the cost of restoring the Woodhaven station on the Atlantic branch in this estimate?
We have not. We have not included that. That's another thing. Like I said, it'd be a nice to have thing, but something that requires that next step.
And that was approximately 99th Street and Atlantic Avenue, I believe.
Yeah, I'd say so. They were built on top of one another, so you could just go downstairs basically.
Right, and that's why I'm saying it's very important. Also, if the Atlantic branch portion is converted to subway service, if it's a failure as a scoot, and that was something that was discussed as well, it may be very easy to reestablish the links,
Yeah.
you know, the ramps that they used to have.
All right,
near that
we got a few
All
more
right.
questions.
Sorry.
Let's, Lisa, and then Karen. And then-
With the, are any portion of the tracks or power usable that's on the existing
Right away.
facility?
No, nothing is usable. The state of disrepair is, I mean, you might be able to melt down those tracks and reuse them like that. But, the embankment, let me tell you, the embankment exists in two parts. Up here, this is an earth embankment with a number of steel bridges over the roads. Between what is the lower Montauk, the Long Island Railroad, and Forest Park here, there was a wooden trestle. That trestle burned down, so this is a missing section. The section through Forest Park was built on the ground. There's nothing really there, and then the section from Park Lane South to Atlantic was built on an earth embankment, but it was much smaller. And then the section south of here was built on a steel and concrete viaduct. The earth embankment sections could be easily upgraded. They are completely overgrown with vegetation and trees and whatnot, so all of that would have to be cut away. All of that was included in the cost. They looked at replacing the bridges, and down in the southern section here, based on the MTA's report, looked at rebuilding the entire viaduct. So the right of way itself is very reusable, but the actual rail bed, the power structure, the stations would have to be rebuilt.
And you would want to modernize all that anyway.
Right.
All right, then it could be used for any subway or even light rail, but that's not what you're proposing, or train. You're not stuck with one. Right, so I
Right.
think you said, Karen?
I think so.
Karen, you have an X on your screen. We're not sure what that means.
An X?
Yeah.
Yeah, next.
That means no.
Yes.
Oh, that just meant,
Spot.
no, it wasn't a question. It was just something that I sent to you, Lisa, just about language. Only thing I would say is I'm going to support anything that provides transit to areas that aren't regularly served or underserved by transit currently. That's it. But otherwise, you could just see my note in the chat.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mason?
Yes. Several things that I'm going to mention is number one, the M train, in other words, the orange M, is the Eastern Division of the BRT. So in other words, these trains that are served by the Queens Boulevard line, local, 6th Avenue local, these trains are stored as we speak in the East New York yard and the Fresh Pond yard. In other words, there are 8 cars, not 10.
Right.
With this said, they cannot serve the portion that you are going to send south of 63rd Drive, Regal Park, Junction Boulevard. Because you're gonna have congestion at the following points. Walkaway Boulevard, 96th Street. Broad
I'm
Channel,
sorry, which points?
you're gonna have congestion at Walkaway Boulevard, 96th Street with the A. And at Broad Channel with the shuttle, because you are forgetting that we have a Walkaway Park shuttle that is in service.
But if this train is deemed to go to Rockaway Park, you wouldn't need the shuttle.
Correct.
Right.
We are proposing eliminating the shuttle.
and then we're gonna do the.
Yeah, I mean, Rockaway Park doesn't get enough service as it is.
Okay,
Right.
but, and as you know, due to the 2010 service cuts, the G had to be cut back to Court Square instead of Forest Hills.
Mhm.
But we love to have it back to Forest Hills.
Yeah, this makes that.
But why not, instead of having the M to Walkway Park, we will love to have the V back. But could you guys explore another alternative instead of, a subway line like rail? Because
We've-
we are the only jurisdiction that doesn't have light rail.
Yeah, they're probably looking at that for IBX.
Yeah, I think they are.
Because I have been into places like North New Jersey.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, DC, Boston, LA, etc.
Jersey.
And they have light rail. Why not New York?
So that will probably happen with IBX.
I know, Lisa, but why not for projects like?
Well,
That's a different discussion.
The subway, I'd like to address that. The subway
Oh, we
is
don't-
far more preferred than light rail. If you can connect two presently disconnected portions of the same system, you are eliminating one or two transfers that you have to do with light rail, either getting on it or getting off it to something else. It's if you can incorporate an added line as part of the subway, you're far ahead of any kind of independent system like a light rail. And that's unfortunately one of the problems with IBX is that it will not be part of the subway.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Andrew and Rick, for this presentation. We're a little short on time now, but it was really thoughtful and thought-provoking, and we will certainly follow this and give you feedback as it progresses, which I hope it does.
Yes,
Thank you.
and we will also in December anticipate a presentation from our friends at the MTA on the 20-year needs and comparative analysis that should help us to be able to also have a thoughtful conversation on how we formulate our recommendations too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I just say a couple of words? It's Miriam. If any of you are really excited about this and want to get involved, we need more people to help us with the community outreach. And it would be wonderful if some of them were people that understood about transportation issues and didn't have to be, I had to get lots of training. So we would love to have that, especially if you're Queens people.
Okay, Vaughn, I see your hand up. We will share your Miriam's information with you. Okay, and we have that mic, but we have to move on because we have 15 minutes left in
we
our
must
meeting. We've
move
got
on.
a few other things that we need to cover. Thank you
Very
guys so
good.
much.
Thank you very much.
Rick, if you don't mind sending me the presentation, that would be awesome. That way we can share it with our members too.
Absolutely.
Thank you
And
so
I'll follow
much.
up with you by phone.
Sounds
Bye-bye.
great. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Let's move to old business.
We didn't finish up with your report, some of the things that.
We didn't? I hit on mine.
You had.
Hold on.
But however, there is one issue. There is one issue that I did.
About the gap. Remember?
Yeah,
Yeah, but you said you were bringing up a new business.
I
So
did.
with old business, station cleaning, it's a new month now. Do we have any information on the timetable and?
We don't have any information. I've been trying to get that,
We
Stuart.
followed up on it
We
yesterday.
follow up on it
All right.
continuously.
Literally,
Let's just keep
I
it,
have a feeling. it's
keep it on the list, keep it on the list,
literally followed up on it
All right.
yesterday.
keep it on the list.
Yes, let me also say that Kara made a great presentation yesterday at the MTA board. And interestingly enough, Kara mentioned congestion pricing as a way of paying for resiliency projects. today I have learned from Trudy that in yesterday's announcement on resiliency that was done by well, why don't you say it?
Yeah, and this leads on to something that I've asked before, but I will request it again. I knew about what the governor and the mayor, and I forget who else, were going to be bringing up. I think it was the Brooklyn Borough President and anyway, talking about the 10th anniversary of Sandy and the new resiliency project, which they announced yesterday. And they also talked about where the funding was going to come for I forget the numbers now, I have it written down someplace, but for a very large resiliency project. So that and I would have, if I knew that you were going to bring it up, and I brought this up before, I think we all should know when a statement is being made on behalf of the TRC or the PCAC at a public forum. Because if I had known that, I would have immediately called you up and saying the governor and the mayor and everybody are making a whole big presentation on resiliency. I didn't know what was in there, but I knew the funding was going to be included, because then it makes it seem like we don't know what's going on. So may I make that request again? So on the record to I don't know if everybody else here wants.
That was the testimony that we do on every month. And hold on, and it was finished at 8 o'clock on Tuesday night. So we just don't always have time.
My email is on.
I'm sorry, but we just don't always have time, Judy.
I am making the request, and if
Appreciate the request. We just can't always accommodate it.
you knew that what you wanted in that testimony, I assume you didn't come up with the idea about talking about resiliency and having it be.
It was the anniversary of Sandy, so it would seem like a natural fit.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying, that I'm not criticizing, but maybe it would have been better if if I had known you were doing it, so I could have given you the facts.
It would have been great to have the facts. Conversely, if you knew something like that was going to be announced, it would have been great for us to know.
Announced at any given time.
So where's the funding coming from, Trudy, then?
It's coming.
State and city?
Part fed.
Fed.
Part from Build Back Better, part from a whole, but I don't have my notes here. But I can tell you that all I'm asking, for me to tell you everything I know and that I find out from various sources on any given day, that's ridiculous. Because I don't know if it necessarily involves you. I did not know that because it was made on behalf of the whole PCAC and TRC.
It was by the chairs.
Okay. I don't think the chairs knew about it.
Of course they did.
But if you send it by the chairs, what would be so difficult in adding all the members?
We just don't have time.
I am talking about.
I'm sorry, Judy.
When you send, excuse me, when you send something.
It's a testimony that we do on a monthly basis.
I know, but if you are doing, I am now making requests. If you don't want to do it to everybody else, if you're sending it to the 3 chairs, would you please add me to the list?
I will leave that up to the chairs. And we'll
Okay.
discuss it at our next executive.
Well, I'm asking Andrew, who's.
If Andrew would like to do that, then Andrew can do that, but we're not gonna play favorites.
I'm not asking, it's not for me. It's not for my benefit. It is for benefit so that we don't look stupid.
Do that, then that's.
And if anybody else here, I think Stu would like to know what we're talking about,
Karen has her hand raised. Also.
Hello, just wanted to say a few things. One, I had an opportunity to go to the Regional Plan Association exhibit at Grand Central Station over the weekend, which was also open house weekend, New York City. And it was a nice.
But can I just finish up on this subject first? Can we?
I think she's speaking to this topic, actually.
Oh, is it on this topic about?
And so, some of the things I had learned in planning school, but some things were new, but it was really just reinforcing the importance of a vision, reconnecting with that vision and adapting that vision over time. And, I realized a lot of the things that I took for granted had really come from like these really earlier visions for New York City and the surrounding areas. And, as I said earlier, after that presentation, I'm going to be supportive of anything that provides services to areas that are underserved, underreached, underfunded. And consequently, I'd also like to see other areas that aren't included in that plan or other plans to rethink
She wants to
those
talk about
areas
the
that
other
we don't
thing.
always
She's talking
talk
about the
about
other thing.
that aren't served. And this is what I had said in the chat, is that I think that it starts with us as a committee to use new language. Like we've called places transit deserts. These aren't naturally occurring scenarios. These are people have made decisions not to expand transit. They have not decided to provide services. I know I've said it before when people talk about the outer borough, and some of you may think it's funny or that I'm being, prickly, but these words have meaning. And when we're talking about an entire borough, 5 boroughs, it's very Manhattan centric and almost polarizing and stigmatizing to refer to everything as the outer regions of something. And so if we can use or change the language we use internally and maybe putting it on the website or correcting it, I think it sends a different message.
Do we use the term outer boroughs?
No,
I don't believe-
not us as a group, but I
okay.
see that some of our
That was
speakers
drilled
have
into
said
my
it
head.
within the transit agency and others like today, and so I brought it up. I remember when
I
we
don't
went
think
to.
we used it.
Can we get that?
No, not
No.
us, but I mean.
And
like,
technically,
MTA
Brooklyn is the
making sure-
innermost borough, so.
Right,
Well, Brooklyn started with, the city started in Brooklyn.
every-
And I get,
That's correct.
as a native Brooklyn.
Thank you, Karen.
And
Yeah,
the last-
are you not finished? Go ahead.
right, and also consequently, when we talk about mobility and accessibility, when we went on our field trip in the summer to the transit facility, I know someone said something that the transit system was created for able-bodied people, and he realized it and tried to correct it. And so, just remembering that the transit system is for everyone, and again, just refashioning the words that we use, the language, and how we express those.
Do we
feelings.
ever use those kind of language? I didn't.
No, but
Not-
you're saying.
Not
It wasn't
us,
us.
and others.
It was the
Yeah.
MTA. Yeah.
MTA, okay.
Before I get back to what I was talking about, I just want to tell Karen that David Jenkins came up with a term that many of us use. He does not say able or whatever he calls it, differently able people. And that way it's not putting any kind of a stigma or anything else. And I know I and others who knew David still use that term, differently able people. So I'm just sharing that with you. So that, okay. Now, could I just finish up what I was saying?
I thought we did.
No, we didn't. I have asked and
I said, I'll send you what I get.
Why can't you, when you're sending it to him?
That's this conversation. Andrew said he would send it to you.
No, but why? I'm asking you a question.
Okay, then how about this? When we get more staff, right now, sorry, Trudy, this
You're sending something to 3 minutes on an email.
because they're the chairs, and if they so decide, then they can do so.
Why not?
Because Trudy, I just don't have the capacity to do that at the moment. Because we
I
have
think
3
we need to
chairs.
Still in the front.
And let's have this conversation another time.
We sure
Oh,
will.
Yes.
But in the meantime, Andrew, every time you get something from,
Not whatever, that's between you two. This does not have to happen right here.
well, it shouldn't be between us two. That's what I'm saying.
But if you raise it and you insist with Andrew, then it's between you. Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
we have a couple of other issues we must
Yes.
discuss. Chris,
Getting into the lawsuit issue.
the new lawsuit.
The new lawsuit.
Yes, the new law.
It is one thing I'm gonna say is, and I'm saying this on the record, it is actually like looking like they didn't realize this, but the station they're talking about is 59th Street Columbus Circle, which for the record, let me finish. I already put that complaint in and it was fixed. It was on the northbound Uptown B and C because the gap was enough that even Edith, my mother, and I'm gonna say other advocates had to do a jump up on the air
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
which was
I remember
very
that.
dangerous. And as of beginning this year, they did fix it because when I got off the B train
So why are we talking?
with the
about
walker, because they're
Because it's a new
suing,
lawsuit.
they're suing the humps.
Who's the they that are
Do
doing
you-
the lawsuit?
I will permit, I will say the name is New York Lawyers of Public Interest. They're suing the MTA.
Nyberg,
No,
no.
the New York lawyers.
Uh-huh.
Of public interest.
Oh,
is suing.
I see.
I checked the article and it's because.
Do they name stations in this?
59th
But wait a minute,
Street,
is
Columbus
This
Circle.
is based in large part on the 2013 New York City Transit Riders report
Yes.
on Mind the Gap. And that, I did let, John McCarthy and others know that we were not notified or involved or anything. And in fact, that we were in the process of updating the report.
And weren't several of our
Reviewing the stations.
mentions fixed?
While, on the day that we found out that Edith had passed away, Bradley was meeting her, to look at some of the stations around.
And I was there too,
Do
helping as
we
well.
know who are the three lawyers? They keep on saying that there were three
Do you have
lawyers.
names?
I don't have the
So
name.
Sasha, Cohen is one of the people who's involved. It's in the press.
But
It is, I,
Reports.
even in the media reports, they just keep on saying three lawyers.
But after
Nobody.
the MTA settled that other lawsuit,
Yeah, but who
this
are-
come on.
That's why I would like to know, who, because I know a lot of these people. I just would like to know if we could find out, okay, I'm making an official request, and if you can email it to me and anybody else who's interested. CC them on it also. I don't want to get special treatment
Yeah.
of finding out who are the three lawyers that they keep on talking about that did this suit. Because maybe then we can find out what their special interest is in bringing all this up again.
And second, regarding this, and I'm gonna say this because Judy, Lisa, you're correct. Because when Edith, you, Trudy, everyone in here, we did those pilot things with the hump. We went to Brooklyn Bridge City Hall because it was a big issue. Making sure that the middle of the platform or when the stations are being re-renovated, it is truly ADA accessible. And the issue is if they're that concerned, maybe they're not really understanding that.
Is that the only
equipment-
station mentioned in the,
At this moment, yes.
Yes.
But I'm gonna guess there's gonna be more.
Well, the way that they did it is using that as an example of what's wrong. And they didn't say that it was just about 59th Columbus,
right?
but they used that as for instance, an EG and IE, whatever it is,
How many are named in this? Do you know?
I know, well, we'll get you the information.
Okay.
We have 1 minute left and I really need to talk
We
about,
have to be- Do we have to be out at the nick of two o'clock?
no, we really need to talk about the other people do.
Okay.
I really need to talk about the open meeting law and what. we
Yes, the
need to
open
do as a
meeting law.
council.
But I have a new business.
So,
Okay, let's do this and then we'll get to you.
so with the expiration of Executive Order 11, the open meeting law requirements that were passed as part of the budget in the last legislative session go into effect. And that requires us to have an in-person quorum going forward.
Like the MTA.
We can be in 2 locations. But we need to develop a resolution that we vote on, which we will craft. And we'll vote on it next month. It will go in effect in January. We have to do this for each of our councils. And we'll also have to do it for PCAC. Each of them will be separate. That specifies what, if any, special exemptions there can be for a person who is not able to attend in person, not because you're waiting for your dry cleaning to be delivered, but there are certain exemptions that are spelled out specifically. There is no such thing as hybrid meetings, according to the Committee on Open Meetings. It is, it's either remote or in person, and the in-person quorum must be maintained. So we will.
Like the MTA board meeting.
Like the MTA board meetings, like every other state agency. The city is, unless there's another state of emergency declared with specific language that puts the open meeting requirement back the way it was. So we are asking for any questions, and then we will craft something to be voted on in November. And then we'll go into effect in January.
And is it physically in person or in person remote?
No, in person,
It has to be
physically.
actually physically then?
Yeah,
You can be remote, but you need a quorum in person physically.
yeah.
Okay,
In order to conduct business.
okay, that's,
We can be in 2 physical locations, as long as there's an
That's what that's
in-person
the MTA
quorum.
board.
And for us right now, that magic number is.
Right now, how many people do we have?
We need 6 because we have 11 council members.
at this particular moment.
I'm assuming Bill Guild will be submitting his letter of resignation because he is no longer in New York and not able to attend meetings.
The 6 is the mayor.
Yeah.
So we
At
have
the
11
moment.
members, so one more than half would be 6.
And if we have 10, it would be the same.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, Bill resigns.
Hi, this is Marisol. So
Hi,
are
Sol.
you, I'm sorry, I had to step away. So are you gonna craft the resolution to have a hybrid model? Or you're just gonna go straight to in person?
So there's, we asked the question specifically and there's no such, the word hybrid apparently doesn't exist. We have to craft a resolution about what the exemptions are. What would allow somebody to be remote, or we can have 2 locations, but they both need to be public. That would allow for a quorum. For instance, if Marisol, if you and Cicely are both proximate to each other and want to have a public location where people can also go, then we can try and have a staff person also attend there, as long as we can open it up to the public. And then we could also have a public meeting availability.
So that second location would count as in person then,
Correct.
as long as a staff member is with more than one or several.
Yeah, as long as there's, there's another public location.
Okay, so my other question is, in the past,
Yes,
people were allowed to call in. So
Correct.
if we go to in person, will the call-in still be allowed?
so as long as we have an in-person quorum and at least of at least 6 people and at least a designated number of in-person locations, then yes.
No, I'm talking about, let's say there's, in this case, we go back to the way we had it before, where it was in person, right?
Correct.
Are we still gonna have the same option? Obviously, I'm gonna try to make my way there, but are we still gonna have the option to call in as we've done in the past before the pandemic?
As long as we have 6 people in person. This rule was passed with this last budget, so it's different than before. So it's not the same rules that we lived by previously. There are currently 6 members in the.
So the effect then of what Jessica does now, but for a different purpose, for lunch purposes, you would still need to solicit in advance whether we're going to achieve a quorum in advance of the meeting. So Marisol, if they determine that information in advance of the day of the meeting, you still might have the option of calling in remotely, as long as the team certifies to the group that they.
No, because if I
have
decide,
commitment to 6 people.
the caveat there would be that if I decide to do remotely, I have to make my space open to the public.
No.
That's the other old rule.
Okay.
That one was changed. It's not that that everybody who's remote has to make their space public. But if, for example, we wanted to have a second remote location and we wanted to do it in the Bronx and you wanted to do it in the borough president's office, we could have a public location there.
Okay.
But we do not have to do that.
If we have an in-person quorum, it's not an issue.
And if we do not have an in-person forum, doesn't mean we can't have a meeting. We just can't take any action.
And I believe
No
some of the-
agendas,
some of
no-
the exemptions would be if somebody isn't physically able to travel.
Yeah.
Somebody is sick with
Yeah.
COVID, for instance, or some other thing you don't want to spread.
Right, but we asked specifically about a couple of things like, well, what if somebody hasn't returned to work? And they're working remotely on a permanent basis and that's not
That's
sufficient.
not good.
No.
So
Right,
are
or if they're
you're
out.
going to
Yeah.
craft something, we're going to vote on it in November.
We're gonna craft something, we'll circulate it. We can, because we
We'll
meet,
vote in November, it'll take place January.
well, because we meet monthly, including when PCAC meets, we will craft something. We will bring it back in November for further discussion, vote on it in December and enact on it in January so that we don't have a gap of when we would have to enact it, which would be in December.
Are we going to vote on this at a full PCAC meeting?
The PCAC is going to have its own.
This
Oh, it's on.
applies to the
Oh, I see.
PCAC. AC meetings then?
It applies to every council, including
Lisa
PCAC.
said each group.
Each council plus whole PCAC, obviously.
Correct.
We don't have a majority, we just barely have a quorum at the PCAC meetings.
So we will likely have to have
Yeah.
at least another location.
And in
for
drafting
PCAC.
this, you're thinking of uniform criteria across, for
No, each-
exemptions across, or each
Well,
council might.
So each council, but the exemptions we haven't gotten to yet,
Right.
LARCC will, and MNRCC will, LARCC specifically will likely have two locations. I think that they
Right,
were pretty
right.
specific
I'm
about that.
sure South
MNRCC may want to.
I don't think so.
We're gonna talk further on that because we have
Shore.
built in a buffer months.
But what might make it difficult for you is what, if I heard you correctly, is that you'd have to have a staffer at that other location.
We are hopeful that we're going to have another staff person
Yeah,
in advance of December 1st.
right.
And hopefully we'll have an additional another staff person by the end of the year.
Yes. All right. We
But
will-
everybody knock wood on that, please, please.
We will look for that resolution.
Oh, guys, we got
Wait,
news
Jason.
that a person hijacked a MTA bus
So that,
Yeah, the-
Queens this morning.
yeah,
It was on
Okay.
Q4.
yeah, okay, but, yeah,
Wow.
okay, Karen had to go.
Karen had to go.
Yeah, so we are having to, yeah.
New business? New business.
You know, something, it is so late now that, for those of you who were at the board meeting yesterday, and a number of people spoke about the, proposed, 28th Street MTA substation. And the people, all the people with a fence down, which I found out is now considered a NOR, you know, it's nationally, sorry, retirement community. Anyway, they are all against it. It was brought to my attention by one of the members of this group that they called 7 Stop 28th Street Substation Coalition. And I'd be happy to discuss it with you because what I wanted to do is go into details about this, but it would take too much time. And so Andrew, I've spoken a little to Andrew about it. Lisa, I will give you a call just on this issue. I'm not going to bother you with anything else that we talked about. And I would hope that we have some kind of a position by our next meeting, by the November meeting, because it's something that's happening and it's really affecting so many people. And I don't know if you tuned into the board meeting yesterday.
We sat there, we sit in all committee
Oh.
meetings and all board meetings.
Okay,
which is
so
why
then you
we were
heard-
writing testimony at 8
So you
o'clock
heard.
tonight.
No, because I saw the Kara gave the testimony.
I
rather
gave
than-
testimony as well.
Oh, well, somehow it didn't get on my computer, but whatever it is, I would ask that. So then you know basically the details about this, but it is affecting a huge number of people. And there is a closed down substation 3 blocks away on 31st Street. So,
We'll do some more research. and
If you could
I
do-
don't know
I
that we
would-
as a council can take a position without having a conversation and a vote, but that, Andrew, that is up to you.
Oh, that's true. We would need to have a vote.
yeah, well, that's why.
We
but
need
if
to
we-
do some research about the other one. Is it usable? Is it the same size?
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to bring it up today, because then by the next meeting, we can do it and maybe have and meanwhile, I'm sure that I will get a lot of more up-to-date information. They don't stop calling me about this,
I'll
so.
speak to Demetrius. I'll try to get some more up to.
Yeah, okay, so that by the next meeting, we will know if we want to take a position on this and what our position is.
We'll add it to the agenda for new business.
All right, Chris?
Just to let everyone know, I know Rachel mentioned about the reduced fare Omni.
Mhm.
Just let everyone know, as Cara, Lisa and Andrew, I know you were shocked, saw Deborah on the video.
We did. She's a star now.
Yes, she's a superstar on there. I know she's right now, her camera's off right now, but it's, as they're calling her now, the Omni Woman, which is funny, but just let everyone know that, with this information going out, it is helping, getting.
No, it's great to get the message out.
Yeah.
Because Omni is so much more easily used and so much faster, especially on buses. Wow.
Yes,
Yes.
and just to let everyone know that that's something that ACTA is trying to push up now, as well as baby stroller pilot and much more.
Thank you. I think we have
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you all, and we'll see you next month.
If you haven't taken a cupcake, please do.
They're really great. You would never know those were gluten. I mean, if you can make something gluten-free and
Thank
vegan
you.
and taste that good, why wouldn't you?
Well,
On the train?
yeah.